Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. I'm back. Gonna be back. Want to go ahead and get to some late-breaking high school hoops recruiting news, and it's crazy because it felt like all summer long and really into September, I had so many people asking me, Torres, my favorite school doesn't have a single commitment yet. What is going on? Does my coach stink? Is my program going in the wrong direction? Whatever. And I kept saying, to quote Aaron Rodgers, RELAX, relax. Because I just said, listen, as September comes, commitments are going to start to flow. Now, I think a lot of kids are going to wait until the spring because of the portal and everything. But at the same time, a lot of times kids are going to want to commit in the fall, take visits in September, and then frankly, lock in their spots and get committed and get signed in November so they can focus on their senior year of high school basketball. Bring it up because over the last couple of weeks, Jalen Harrelson to Notre Dame, one of three guys now that is committed to Notre Dame in the last couple of weeks. Kentucky is locked in Jasper Johnson, Malachi Moreno, Derek Dixon at UNC, etc. Well, on Monday, another five-star officially came off the board. 6'5" guard, one of my favorite players, frankly, in this class of 2025. Darius Adams, originally from the state of New Jersey, now playing his high school ball at La Lumiere in Indiana. Late last week, announced a Final Three of Tennessee, Michigan State, and UConn. Well, on Monday, Darius Adams at 6'5", five-star guard from Jersey, playing at La Lumiere, commits to the University of Connecticut Huskies. That is right. The two-time defending national champion Huskies have picked up their first commitment in the class of 2025, and I will be transparent, people. I don't think it's going to be their last, and not anytime soon. We may get some news here, which we will discuss momentarily regarding the rest of the 2025 class. By the way, make sure you're locked in on our Torres on UConn Twitter page, and as always, you can get your Maura Hurley 24 tees at AaronTorresOnline.com. Let's go ahead and dive into this commitment. First of all, don't really think this was a huge shocker or a surprise. Darius Adams was one of these kids that has been prioritized by this staff for months now. Visited UConn over the summer. Seemingly had a great time. I mean, who doesn't have a great time on an unofficial or official visit? Made it a priority. We're trying to figure out the fall stuff. He's visiting other schools. But it always just felt like UConn was in the mix. He's from Jersey. He's kind of that tough, hard-nosed Northeast kid. And it just felt like a perfect match with UConn. And really, even before he committed, the crystal ball started rolling in. By the end of last week, all the intel that I had gotten was that he was going to be a Husky, so it does become official. In terms of the type of player he is, listen, he is a Dan Hurley kid to a T, okay? And it was funny when I was kind of prepping, thinking, knowing that this kid was going to commit, I was thinking about something that Dan Hurley kept saying early on in his tenure at UConn before he got it rolling. He kept saying, he would say, he said it all the time that first year or two. He said, listen, it's no disrespect to the kids that we inherited, the kids we have. Remember, this was the pre-portal era. So if you had a kid, you kind of, I don't want to say got stuck with them, but there weren't a lot of options to just overhaul a roster. I want to welcome a new sponsor to the Aaron Torres pod, Blue Chew. Fellas, remember back in the day when you were always ready to go? Well, things change. You got a lot on your mind. Your football team isn't very good. Well, here's the good news. That's where Blue Chew comes in. Blue Chew is an online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in chewable form. To get started, it's so easy. Just go to BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. The best part, it's all done online. No awkward trip to the doctors, no waiting at the pharmacy, no stink eyes, no raised eyebrows, nothing. Thing is, though, I know a lot of you are probably wondering, Torres, does it actually work? Do you think I need to try it? Well, here's the deal. Try it for a month for free, and I think there will be no turning back, all right? You'll love it. Your partner is going to love it. Your football team may stink, but you'll be rocking like the 85 Bears between the sheets. So go ahead, try it out, and here is the great news. We have a special offer for listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. you can try Blue Chew for free when you use the code Torres at checkout. All you got to do is pay $5 in shipping. Go to bluechew.com, use promo code Torres at checkout. You get Blue Chew for free for a free month, and you only have to pay $5 shipping. Again, visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. Thank you to Blue Chew for sponsoring the Aaron Torres podcast. But what he constantly said, Dan Hurley, was, we don't have a lot of players that look like UConn basketball players should look like. Wasn't a knock on those kids, to be abundantly clear, but he just said, look, size, speed, athleticism, we should be in the upper 1% of college basketball. When we walk off the bus, we should look like a team that is good enough to win a national championship from the size, speed, athleticism perspective. And I think as you've seen the last couple years, certainly last year, UConn they had dudes. I mean, listen, first of all, 4 of their 5 starters got drafted. Alex Karaban would have if he entered the draft. But if you just watch them, Tristan Newton, size, length, athleticism. Steph Castle, size, length, athleticism. Donovan Kling Kong, the 7'2" center, SWAT and everything. That's what UConn players should look like. And I think Darius Adams is in that next mold. 6'5", super long, can get to his spots on the floor, can finish with both hands, attacks with both hands, is an elite three-point shooter. The stroke is just, it's on point. In a lot of ways, he actually does remind me of Tristan Newton. Now, it's a little bit unfair to compare him to a kid that just got drafted in the second round by the Indiana Pacers after 5 years of college basketball. Tristan Newton began his career at East Carolina, ended up at UConn, but it's that same kind of size and frame and skill set that made Tristan Newton, frankly, a UConn legend. And I kind of just think I see a lot of those same variables and intangibles in Darius Adams. So I cannot wait to see this kid on campus. And I'll tell you this, I think there's some big picture ramifications for the UConn recruiting board. What does it mean for some players that might be off the board, but also who could be next? Because I do think there is a potential, not saying it's going to happen, but potential second commitment on the horizon, okay? So what it means, I think, first of all, UConn had prioritized 2-3 guards early in this recruitment. I think some of them are off the board. Malik Thomas, Malik Thomas is an incredibly gifted player. He felt like for a long time that he was trending to be a Husky. Takes a visit in June, right after Dan Hurley does the Lakers interview, says, this makes me want to play for Dan Hurley even more, knowing that he was LeBron and AD. He was good enough to coach LeBron and AD. He's good enough to coach me. So that kid took a visit in the spring. But at the same time, as things have gone on, it feels as though the two sides have kind of parted. They haven't parted ways, but Malik Thomas has wanted to take more visits. UConn has prioritized other guards. This, to me, officially puts Malik Thomas off the board. Did visit Bama this past weekend for that insane recruiting weekend. Is expected to visit Arkansas this coming weekend. And I'll tell you, he ended up at Overtime Elite. The recruitment has gotten a little quieter, although I do feel like Arkansas and probably Kansas State late in the summer were starting to ascend as UConn descended. So this isn't just a video for UConn fans celebrating an incredible commitment, but Malik Thomas, to me, is essentially off UConn's board. I would expect him. I don't want to project, but like I said, he's got a list of 7, but I think 2 or 3 have really kind of separated. Same thing. I think this all but eliminates UConn from Caden Lewis. Caden Lewis, 6'4" guard from the state of Maryland. And this was a kid that I think UConn really, really, really liked, okay? Remember, this was one of the 2 kids, along with the center Eric Ryby, that UConn visited after going to the White House. So UConn goes to the White House to celebrate the national championship a few weeks ago. And Dan Hurley and Kamani Young, they go straight from the White House in the same suit to visit a Caden Lewis and Eric Ryby. But we'll talk about a Caden Lewis in this case at his high school. A Caden Lewis, 6'3", 6'4" guard, attacking, whatever. But I will say with Darius Adams on board, think this really does eliminate UConn from the from the Caden Lewis sweepstakes. I think Darius Adams, I don't think this eliminates them. I think verbally committing actually is a pretty good sign that he'll end up at UConn. Darius Adams to UConn. I think with this news, I think Kentucky now jumps to the front runner list of a Caden Lewis. Caden Lewis, we've talked about. No, this is a UConn reaction show, but I think he fits pretty well with Jasper Johnson. And so because of it, I think Caden Lewis ultimately will become a Kentucky Wildcat. Finally, from the UConn perspective, I'll say this. I think Dan Hurley, he just got in the kitchen. He's just starting to cook. Darius Adams, first guy off the board. I think the next big priority, it goes without saying, to me, is Braylon Mullins, the 6'4" guard out of Indiana. We have talked a ton about Braylon Mullins the last few weeks. A fast riser. It feels like, by the way, there's a lot of kids that really helped themselves over the course of this past summer, but he's basically a universal 5-star Braylon Mullins from Indiana. And UConn, like many schools, really prioritized him over the last couple months. They have been to his high school many times over the last couple weeks. And obviously last week, Braylon Mullins cut his list to 3 of UConn, Indiana, and North Carolina. I said at the time, I still believe this, to me, feels like largely a UConn versus Indiana, in-state versus kind of the hot school right now with UConn. And I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth because I don't think anything is done. I feel good where UConn is. Indiana, listen, it's going to be appealing to play for the home state school. It's going to be appealing if you're Braylon Mullins to play with your AAU teammate Trent Sisley, who committed to Indiana this week. But what I also see is Braylon Mullins, listen, I think he wants to carve his own path. Dan Hurley has kind of indicated, listen, I think you're a one-and-done type kid. You come here, my goal is to get you out in 10 months. And it's not to say that Hubert Davis or that Mike Woodson wouldn't do the same, but when a guy that has produced, 8 draft picks, 7 draft picks in the last 2 years tells you that he believes you're a potential one-and-done, I guess it'd be 6, really, because Adama Sanogo was a free agent, whatever. But when Dan Hurley tells you he thinks you can be a one and done, I think it's hard to say no to that, especially, by the way, with all the on-court success that UConn has had. So we'll see with Braylon Mullins. He has said he wants to commit before his senior year of high school. That feels like it's coming down on the horizon. As I'm recording, there is no official commitment date, but he's taken visits to all 3 schools. He's cut his list, and I would expect news on Braylon Mullins soon. But with that said, today is about Darius Adams. Congrats, UConn fans. This kid is a stud. And as I said, make sure you're following our Torres on UConn page for all of the late-breaking UConn news. And, of course, our Maura Hurley 24 shirts. Only got a couple of them left. Only got a couple months left to take advantage of that. So make sure that you order yours today as Darius Adams